With intuitive eating, it is really important to eat what you crave, but how can you do that in a way that actually lets you lose weight? I've had a lot of people ask me how to deal with cravings when eating intuitively and trying to lose weight. And so today I'm going to answer that by giving you 6 pieces of advice for how to tell when you should give in to a craving. Hey there, I'm Mish, and I am a full-time researcher with my PhD, and I make videos here, usually sharing scientific studies to help you reach your weight loss, fitness, health, and nutrition goals. As kind of a relevant aside, I almost didn't film today because I'm really bloated from hormones and eating buckets of salt yesterday. And so I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't film. I'm kind of broken out and bloated. And I'm like, you know what? People are not watching me to stare at my face. Like, you guys are not watching these videos because I'm so exciting to look at. So I decided, you know what? It doesn't matter how I look or how I feel about how I look. I'm going to share some information with you because that's what matters. So that's a little step in my own intuitive eating self-acceptance journey. So I know I often say here that you should listen to your cravings because that is definitely a very important part of intuitive eating. But that doesn't mean that you should always go with the most palatable food item every time you want to eat. Like, it doesn't mean you should always just eat whatever sounds the very best necessarily. It's kind of like good parents probably wouldn't let their kids eat ice cream at every single meal because it wouldn't be great for them, even if the kids would enjoy eating ice cream at every single meal. But good parents would probably also incorporate ice cream as a treat regularly into their kids' diets so that the kids can still have the joy of ice cream without overdoing it. So this applies to intuitive eating because it's kind of like you are the parent and your body is the child, and sometimes your body has some cravings that aren't necessarily what's best for it. But like, just like with the child, you would probably feed the child when they are hungry because the child knows better about when they're hungry, but the child does not always know what the best thing to eat is. So the key question is, how do you decide when a craving is worth going with, especially if you're trying to lose weight? And another way to put it is, how often should you work in those treats? And as I said in my last intuitive eating video, I'm kind of an unusual intuitive eating proponent because I fully believe that people should be able to lose weight if they want to, and that they should be able to have aesthetic goals like abs and being lean and whatnot. But I think it's really, really critical that you do it out of a place of self-love and like a happy goal to achieve, rather than self-loathing or feeling like you're inadequate and will never be good enough until you get your goal body. So if you're approaching this from a place of self-loathing, it's just not really going to work, at least not nearly as well. So it's kind of a little spiel on that, is work towards self-love first and foremost. So if you're eating intuitively, trying to lose weight from a place of self-love, and it's not working for you, then it sounds like it is time for a more nuanced approach. And specifically, if you think that it's your cravings that are getting in the way, then you need to be able to tease apart when you should actually give in to your cravings versus when you should go for the more healthy food. And more importantly, you'll need to learn when a craving is something that you actually need to feel satisfied or when it just kind of sounds good. And so I'm going to give you some advice today to help you tease those apart and figure out whether a craving is something you actually need to feel satisfied or whether it's just kind of a whim that isn't really that important to fulfill. And on that note of trying to find a more nuanced approach if things aren't working, I'm thinking of starting kind of a sprinkled in intuitive eating troubleshooting series of like trying to help you figure out how to tweak your intuitive eating to make it work better for you. So if you're interested in those kinds of videos or more videos like this, please let me know in the comments below. Oh, and if you haven't already, be sure to hit the notification bell so that you stay updated on my videos. And so I just want to say, first things first, do not try to cut out any foods for diet reasons. Like, if you keep craving brownies, cutting out brownies is not the answer. Like, that's anti-intuitive eating, unless it's for ethical reasons. So if you are cutting out animal products for going vegan, that is totally fine because it's a completely different motivation than cutting things out because you hate yourself and want to lose weight. So I actually have a video on this showing that cutting out foods completely backfires and makes you gain weight and eat more of them. So yeah, don't do that. And to clarify what I mean by cravings, I mean when you find yourself really craving a food that is not in line with your general goals for a healthy diet. So let's say that you are eating a whole foods plant-based diet for the most part, and you find yourself craving brownies full of refined sugar and flour and stuff. That would be an example of a craving. So I'm going to be using the brownie example a lot in this video, but you can substitute in anything else that is not in line with your general goals for the types of food you would like to be eating, ideally. And so I'm going to attempt to organize these pieces of advice into rough categories. And this first one is very short, and that is check in with yourself. So this is a very simple first test to tell whether or not you should eat the food you're craving. And that is to just ask yourself, well, how badly do you want the food? If your answer is meh, it sounds good, then problem solved, you probably don't need the food to feel satisfied. And conversely, if your answer is, yes, I am dying for it and I will not be able to think about anything else until I get this brownie, then also problem solved, you should eat the brownie. But it's that large gray area in between of, well, I don't know, or yeah, I kind of want it pretty badly, can't tell, that is going to need some further testing. And if the answer is somewhere in this gray area of you can't quite tell if you'll need to eat the thing in order to feel satisfied, then you should run some additional tests on yourself. And the first example of a test you could run on yourself is the hunger test. And this is to determine if your craving is just a result of you getting too hungry, or your body's way of telling you to eat something. So for this test, it's very simple. I would just suggest eating a healthy food that's in line with your general goals until you're about halfway satiated. So eat about half of the normal portion you would have for a meal. So if you are still craving that bad food, like I'm gonna start just saying a brownie, if you're still craving the brownie after you have that half a meal, then that suggests that you do really need the brownie to feel truly satisfied, because it's clearly not just a result of general hunger if you're not hungry anymore but still craving that brownie. But if you no longer want it after eating half of your meal, then that is a pretty clear indicator that you were just craving the brownie because you were hungry, not because you actually needed the brownie. And for a personal example, lately when I've been getting really hungry, I'll often start craving a quesadilla, especially after like a long day where I have probably burned more energy and haven't quite been eating enough to keep up. I'll crave a quesadilla. I go through phases with various foods being the object of my craving. But when that happens and I'm not absolutely dying for the quesadilla, then I will try having some snacks and then see if I still want it. And if I still want it, then I will go get the quesadilla from this quesadilla place downtown that I posted about, which I'm amazed that there are vegan quesadillas at a random quesadilla place in the middle of Arkansas, but I'm so happy. It's really good cheese too. But anyways, usually like 90% of the time after I've had those snacks, I'm like, oh, I didn't really want a quesadilla, I was just hungry. So this has happened enough times now that I've been able to learn how extreme a quesadilla craving needs to be for me to actually want the quesadilla. And the funny thing too is that, again, 90% of the time after I've had those snacks, I will realize that I actually now would prefer the healthy meal, like my usual salad veggie bowl I've been loving lately, over the quesadilla. So after having my snacks, I'm like, oh yeah, actually the salad bowl sounds better now. So for whatever reason, when I'm super hungry, my body, I guess, just craves this higher calorie density foods to kind of deal with that hunger more efficiently. And another test you can run is the satisfaction test. And this is more of a test over time rather than in the moment. And that's to learn whether a craving means that you absolutely need the food to be satisfied or whether it's just something that sounds good. So one way to tell is if you don't go with your craving, do you eat past satiety? And the main way to tell whether or not you really need something to be satisfied is if you find yourself overeating because you're not eating the thing. So for example, let's say that I craved a quesadilla and I said, no, I'm not gonna eat it. I don't want that because it's bad for me, even though I'm really craving it. I don't do that, but let's just say in this example, I do that. Then if I find myself eating a normal dinner plus a cookie, plus a brownie, plus some more dinner, or any amount of overeating, that strongly suggests that I should have just had the quesadilla, because often back when I used to ignore my cravings a lot, I'd find that I'd like eat everything else around the food that I really wanted. Whereas I could have just felt satisfied if I'd eaten the like 300 calorie quesadilla instead of eating like 700 calories of other stuff to try to not have the quesadilla. So if you find yourself eating past satiety to make up for the frustration of not getting your craved food, then that means you should have gone with your craving. And over time, you will learn through experimentation and just really paying attention how strong your craving needs to be to lead to this overeating effect. Whereas if you're able to eat a normal portion of healthy food and totally forget about the craving and not overeat or feel like you wish you'd had the craved food, then that means you didn't need the craved food to feel satisfied. And another way to test this is how much you are craving that specific food above everything else. So if I'm like almost tied between a quesadilla and a salad, and the quesadilla is just slightly above, that probably means that the salad will do a great job of satisfying me because the quesadilla didn't beat it out that much. And another option to test this in the moment is to try to make a healthy substitute for the thing you're craving. So I'm just going to keep using examples from my life because I feel like that's most helpful. So often I will crave cookies, especially during fun hormonal times. So sometimes I will make a healthy chickpea cookie dough, and that totally knocks out my craving. In fact, it's like the best tasting thing ever to me. Sometimes I specifically crave that healthy version of the cookie dough. But other times I just really need that fatty, sugary cookie dough for whatever reason. And so if I make the healthy cookie dough and I take a bite and I'm like, this is not doing it for me, then I'll go make the unhealthy cookie dough and just save the healthy one for later. So that's one way to tell if you really need to have the specific craving, is to try to make a healthy version and see if that does it for you. And in fact, that study I mentioned earlier about don't cut out foods or else it'll backfire shows that people who make healthy versions of their cravings actually do better at losing weight than people who cut out the foods completely. So again, check that out if you're interested. And over time, as I've gotten more in tune with my cravings and what they mean, I haven't needed to start making the healthy thing and then realize I don't want it, because usually I can just tell from the get-go now when I will want real fatty processed cookie dough. And this next piece of advice was actually inspired by one of your comments on a recent video, so thank you very much for that. And that is determining whether your craving is general or specific. And to get at this, you should ask yourself, are you craving a very specific food, like a specific fried chicken sandwich with this specific sauce on it in this specific way? Or are you craving a general class of foods, like any kind of fatty sandwich? And this is really important because it helps determine how you can satisfy your craving in a way that's more in line with your goals. Because sometimes you'll crave something where you actually only need a part of it. So to use another personal example, often in the 2 days after lifting especially, I will crave salty, fatty foods. And it turns out, unsurprisingly, this is pretty clearly driven by a protein craving, because I found that when I eat tofu, or when I add more tofu to my foods or add more source of protein generally, those cravings will go away. So it kind of makes sense that my body would crave fatty, salty food when it wants protein, because most of the time that I eat fatty, salty food, it is chock full of protein. So like fried chicken sandwiches, vegan chicken sandwiches, of course, for example. So in that case, my body is kind of on the right track with that craving and getting what I need, but it is equally satisfied by a pile of tofu or a fried chicken sandwich. Because after I eat the tofu, I'll realize, oh, I feel much better now and I don't have a food coma. So that's always nice. So if you are getting cravings for a general class of foods, like fatty, salty foods, then ask yourself, what types of nutrients are those foods associated with in your diet? Because it makes sense that over time, my body would have learned that when I eat fried foods, I'm getting a ton of protein. Whereas your body might learn that if you're getting a ton of sugar, you're getting a lot of like fruit and fiber. So for example, if you tend to have a lot of smoothies with a ton of dates in them, and you find yourself having sugar cravings all the time, maybe your body's asking for more fruit or something like that. And on that note, often when I crave sugary food, I find that a smoothie will actually do a great job at satisfying that craving. But of course, in all these cases, if you start eating the healthy thing and you're finding that it is not satisfying your craving, then you should eat the unhealthy thing. Because that's going to be better for you in the long run, because you don't want to get in the habit of ignoring your body's signals, especially when they're strong signals like that. And I have 2 more shorter pieces of advice now. And one of those is the persistence test, as I'm calling it. And that is, if you have been craving the same food multiple days in a row, then you should probably go with it. So for example, if I've been craving fatty, salty foods all week and eating more protein is not doing the trick, then I will go and get myself a fatty, salty thing or make it. Because if I keep having that same craving every single day, no matter what I eat, then that probably means I should have it. Even if it's like a mild background craving, if it just keeps appearing, then I'll just do it. Because I don't have a good scientific reason right now. It goes away. So yeah. And the last test I have for you, and the one that I think might be my favorite because it'll work like right away, and I think it's very diagnostic, but it's one that my husband hates, and that is the laziness test. So if you are craving something and you are unwilling to make it yourself, then you probably don't need that thing. Or if you absolutely never cook and you feel like you have no hope as a cook, then you can ask yourself, am I willing to go out and buy that thing? Or am I willing to walk to the store to get that thing? Some kind of barrier that requires you to put in a little bit of work to get the thing is what you want to ask yourself. So if you are willing to put in like 30 minutes to an hour to make this food, as I generally am for my big cravings, then that probably means that you do really need that food to be satisfied, especially if you have a healthy alternative that's more easily available. So for example, if I have all the ingredients I need to easily throw together a veggie bowl in 5 minutes, but I still would rather spend 30 minutes making a burger and doing the dishes and all that, then that probably means I should have the burger because I am willing to do a lot more to get it and it's a strong craving. But if you only want this item if it is delivered to your doorstep or someone else makes it for you or it's already packaged, then that probably means you don't really need it to feel satisfied. So I feel like this is a very nice quick rule that can kind of tell you how motivated you really are for that food item versus how much it's just something that sounds good, especially to augment fun laziness. Sorry, my camera died when I just wanted to add this one thought after filming. If at the end of all this, you are still wondering how you are supposed to lose weight while giving in to your cravings regularly, I just want to remind you that it is not all or nothing. You do not have to stick 100% to healthy eating in order to lose weight. In fact, I think it's actually just as important, if not even more important for weight loss, that you listen to your physiological signals very carefully. I think that is actually going to go further than making your diet slightly better. So if you really stick to mindfulness and learning to listen to your hunger and fullness cues, you can eventually learn to sort of detect the calorie count of things. So for example, when I've been really in tune with my hunger and fullness signals, like 2019 was a really good year for that, and early 2020 before the pandemic, I would actually find that I would often lose weight from eating crappy foods. So when I go on vacation to San Diego and eat in restaurants, just like eating fried fatty foods all day, every day, I would lose weight. And that's because my body would be able to kind of count the calories and stuff, I guess, and I would just have no appetite for like 16 hours after eating at one of these restaurants because I just feel like, no, I just have literally no appetite. And I don't know why it was specifically with processed foods, but my point is, once you have these hunger and fullness cues down pat, weight loss is easy. Like, check out my other video I did recently on factors that influence what weight you maintain at on intuitive eating and how much you can lose. So yeah, you definitely can regularly give into your cravings, and I guess a lot of you like to hear specific numbers. So I'll say the number of times that I eat crappy processed foods a week is probably like 4 to 7 times. So like during the fun PMS period and everything, probably closer to 7. Rest of the month, probably closer to 3 or 4 times a week. So that could mean like I eat a burger for dinner, or I eat a cookie, or Oreos, various snacks that my husband brings home, that kind of stuff. So non-whole foods, plant-based things that aren't just like toast, but are like, you know, highly processed foods. And I don't really find that gets in the way of my goals. So all of this will take some experimenting to get down. It's not necessarily something you can just instantly solve, but intuitive eating is a process. It is not a crash diet quick fix, but it is something that can lead to long-term sustainable weight loss that makes you feel happy and self-loving instead of hating yourself, and involves actually listening to your body instead of trying to restrict it or be all obsessive over food. So these tips are definitely very high level intuitive eating. Like, this is like intuitive eating level 5, whereas learning your hunger and fullness cues are like intuitive eating level 2 or 1. I don't know. So yeah, give it some time. We're all still figuring this out. I don't think anyone is 100% able to know when they should eat a craving or not, because there isn't really a solid right answer, right? It's all kind of a blurry line of just trying to figure out what's best. So I hope this answered your question if you were curious about how to deal with cravings on intuitive eating, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you tried any of these? Do you have any additional things to add or methods you have for determining how strong a craving is? I'd love to hear what you have to say, so please comment below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell to stay on top of my videos. And if you are feeling generous, please like and share because it helps me get more people in our intuitive eating wagon and help people lose weight and reach their goals in a self-loving way. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.